There's a quiet kind of kindness that asks for nothing in return. And sometimes that silence speaks louder than gold. Maria was 26, broke, and drowning in debt. She had no family to fall back on, no safety net, just her scrubs, her stethoscope, and the hope that one day life would finally cut her some slack. But when she took the job no one else wanted, caring for a silent, dying old man, everyone laughed at her. Even her landlord mocked her, saying she was throwing her life away on someone already halfway to the grave. They didn't know the truth. None of them did. Because what Maria didn't know then was that this lonely, forgotten man held a secret worth more than most people could dream of. Maria had always believed in doing the right thing, even when the world didn't do right by her. Fresh out of nursing school, she expected to land a hospital job with decent pay and regular hours. But after months of rejections, unpaid internships, and too many nights crying into her pillow, she found herself staring at an ad scribbled on a corner bulletin board. Private caregiver needed, elderly gentleman, modest pay, living. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't what she dreamed of, but it was work. The address led her to a small, weathered house on the edge of town, the kind of place people drove past without noticing. There were no fences, no flowers, just a crooked mailbox and a porch that creaked underfoot. When the door opened, there stood Mr. Benson. He was tall but stooped, dressed in faded overalls and a wrinkled shirt. His eyes were sharp, though, like they saw things others couldn't. He barely said a word as she walked in, just nodded and pointed to a chair. The interview lasted 5 minutes. "You start tomorrow," he rasped. "Bring your things." That was it. Maria moved in the next morning with only 2 bags. The room she was given was simple. A bed, a dresser, a window that overlooked a dusty backyard. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. Mr. Benson never asked for much. He ate little, spoke less, and spent most of his time sitting in a worn armchair, staring out the window. Sometimes he read, sometimes he just closed his eyes. But Maria noticed something strange from the very beginning. He watched her, not in a creepy way, but like he was studying her, like he was waiting for something. Still, she treated him like family. She made sure his sheets were clean, his soup was warm, and his voice, however rare, was heard. One evening, after reading him a story from a children's book he randomly picked up, she caught him smiling faintly. It was the first time she saw him smile. The job was harder than she expected. No one paid attention to caregivers like her. Her former classmates were posting pictures from their new apartments, while she was scrubbing floors and changing sheets stained with sweat and medicine. Her phone buzzed constantly. Collection agencies, her old landlord, friends who thought she'd made a mistake. "You're wasting your youth," one friend told her. "He's going to die soon anyway. Why give your life to someone who can't give anything back?" Even her landlord showed up one day, smirking as he leaned against the doorway. "So this is where you ended up," he sneered. "Taking care of some poor old fool. I bet he smells like death already." Maria clenched her jaw, but said nothing. She knew what she was doing mattered, even if no one else did. Then came the oddities. Every week, a black, sleek car pulled up. Always the same driver, always in a suit. He never spoke to Maria, just handed her a sealed envelope addressed to Mr. Benson and left. Once she tried to peek inside, but Mr. Benson snatched it from her hands and locked it in a drawer. Another time, she found a shelf full of books, not novels or history, but banking, finance, and law. Thick, heavy tomes filled with charts and numbers. "What are these for?" she asked. Mr. Benson looked at her for a long moment before replying. "Just something from another life," he said quietly. She didn't press further, but the questions began to pile up. One night, around 3 a.m., Maria woke to the sound of coughing. She rushed to Mr. Benson's room. He was drenched in sweat, trembling. "I'm here," she whispered, placing a cool cloth on his forehead. He reached for her hand with surprising strength. "Maria," he whispered, eyes glassy, "you're the only person who's ever treated me like a human being." His grip loosened slightly. "I hope the world repays you well." Then he fell asleep again. Maria sat beside him the rest of the night. Something about those words stuck with her, like he knew something she didn't. The days after that whispered confession felt different. Mr. Benson became quieter, if that was even possible. He stopped eating much. And though Maria tried every soup, every tea, every comfort she could think of, his body just seemed to give up slowly, like a candle burning its last light. But his eyes, they never stopped watching her. Sometimes, when she cleaned his room or read to him from old poetry books, she'd catch him staring at her with something between peace and regret, like he wanted to say more, but couldn't find the words. Or maybe he already had. One afternoon, Maria found herself folding his clothes, a pile of worn flannels and stiff trousers, when she noticed something strange. Each piece had a tiny tag sewn into the collar, not laundry tags. These were handwritten notes in faded ink. Some said Paris 1973, others Cairo 1985, or London 1969. She held one up, squinting at the ink. "Why do your clothes have these?" she asked. Mr. Benson didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, then turned his gaze out the window. "They remind me of who I used to be," he finally said. Maria frowned. "And who was that?" He smiled faintly. "A man who forgot how to live. Until now." She didn't understand what he meant, but it made her heart ache all the same. By the end of the week, Mr. Benson could barely sit up. Maria stayed by his side constantly, sleeping beside his bed on a small cot she dragged in. She held his hand when he trembled, sang lullabies when he woke up scared, and whispered prayers when she thought he might not make it through the night. On the morning of the 7th day, she walked into his room with a warm bowl of porridge. He was already gone, peacefully, his eyes closed, lips slightly parted, as if he'd simply chosen to let go in his sleep. Maria stood there for a long time, the bowl still in her hands, tears silently rolling down her face. She hadn't expected to feel this broken. After everything, the silence, the mystery, the unanswered questions, she had come to love him like family, maybe even more. Because no matter how little he spoke, he had seen her. When the world ignored her, he had watched her with quiet pride. And now he was gone. 3 days passed before a knock came at the door. It was a tall man in a dark suit, the same driver who always brought the sealed envelopes. He handed her a letter without saying a word. Inside was a short note. "Mrs. Maria Donald, you are cordially invited to the law offices of D. Langston and Company regarding the final will and estate of Mr. Benson Williams. Please arrive at 10 a.m. sharp." She stared at the paper. Estate will. What estate? Mr. Benson lived in a dusty house, wore old clothes, and ate porridge every morning. What could he possibly have left? Still, she went. Maria walked into the law office like someone who didn't belong. She was still wearing her nurse's scrubs, a bit wrinkled from the week of grief and exhaustion. Her shoes were worn, her hair tied back in a simple bun, and she carried nothing but a small bag with Mr. Benson's letter inside. The receptionist barely looked up. "Name?" she asked, not unkindly. "Maria Donald," she said softly. The woman's eyes widened. "Oh yes, right this way." She was led through a quiet hallway into a large, polished room where an older man in a crisp suit stood waiting. He offered a small smile and gestured for her to sit. "I'm Attorney Langston," he said. "You're here regarding Mr. Benson Williams' final wishes." Maria nodded slowly. "Of course," she said. I didn't expect there to be anything to go over." He didn't seem like he had much. Langston gave her a long look, the kind that made her feel like he knew something she didn't. Then he opened a thick folder on his desk and began to speak. "Mr. Benson was not who you thought he was," he started. Maria blinked. He lived quietly, yes, but behind that silence was one of the most powerful financial minds of our time. She sat frozen as he continued. He founded 9 private banks across Africa and Europe, all under different names, all operating independently, yet all connected by one silent owner, him. Maria's heart pounded in her chest. "You're saying he owned banks?" 9 of them, Langston confirmed. "And every single share, every building, every asset, it all belongs to you now." There was a pause, a very long pause. Maria stared at him, her mouth slightly open. "Me," she whispered. "Yes," he said, sliding a document across the table. "He wrote you into his will." She couldn't breathe. Her hands trembled as she picked up the paper. It wasn't fake. It was real. Everything. The dying old man who lived in a dusty house with worn-out clothes was worth billions. And he left it all to her. Maria didn't remember leaving the office. She found herself outside, standing on the sidewalk, staring at the sky like it might give her answers. Why? She was just a nurse, a struggling, unnoticed girl from nowhere. She never asked for anything. She only wanted to do the right thing. And somehow, that was enough. Langston had given her a phone number and told her people would contact her soon. Bankers, lawyers, accountants. She was now the sole owner of an empire built in shadows. But as the weight of the truth settled on her shoulders, another thought crept in. What would people say? What would they do? Would they believe her? Would they try to take it from her? Word spread fast. Maybe because someone talked. Maybe because secrets don't stay buried forever. Either way, within days, Maria's life changed completely. Old friends came crawling out of the woodwork, suddenly remembering how close they were. Former coworkers sent messages begging for jobs. Strangers reached out, claiming they were distant relatives. Even the hospital called, offering her back the job she once begged for. But worst of all, her former landlord showed up again. This time, he wasn't laughing. He stood at the gate of the little house where she had cared for Mr. Benson. His face was pale, his posture defeated. "Maria," he said, voice shaking, "I heard what happened. I need your help." She opened the door slowly, watching him carefully. He swallowed hard. "My business is failing. I owe money everywhere. I'm about to lose everything." He looked down. "I know I treated you badly. I was wrong. But please, if you could just give me a loan, I'll pay you back. I swear." Maria stared at him. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with calm understanding. She remembered the nights she cried alone after he mocked her. The way he laughed when he thought she was wasting her life. And now he needed her. She stepped forward, and then, without a word, she walked past him into the black car waiting behind. Inside, a driver bowed his head. "Where to, madam?" She took one last look at the house, at the memories, at the pain, and smiled. "To my next meeting," she said. Then turned to the driver. "And tell the team I want to start planning the first outreach program. We're going to build clinics, free ones." He nodded. As the car pulled away, Maria leaned back, closed her eyes, and whispered, "All I did was show kindness to a man the world forgot. I didn't know he was building a legacy just for me." Maria didn't change overnight, even with the weight of 9 banks behind her name. She still woke up early, still made her own tea in the morning, still walked barefoot around the house for a while before the world started knocking on her door. But now the world was noisier than ever. Reporters wanted interviews. Politicians sent messages. Businessmen tried to get meetings. And yet, Maria stayed grounded. Not because she had money, but because she remembered who she was before the money came. A girl with nothing but heart and hope. Through it all, one person never changed. Samuel, her neighbor. The quiet man who lived 2 doors down when she first moved in to care for Mr. Benson. He was poor, worked at a local mechanic shop, wore second-hand clothes, and always smelled faintly of engine oil. But he was kind, always checking in on her, always offering help when others looked away. When she cried after Mr. Benson passed, he sat with her in silence. When she thought about quitting, he reminded her why she started. And when the world turned upside down, he stood beside her, not for what she had, but for who she was. They married quietly. No big ceremony, no flashing cameras, just them, a few candles, and a promise whispered under the stars. She once told him, "You were the only light I saw when everything else was dark." And he replied, "Then I'll shine forever." Maria didn't buy mansions or expensive cars. Instead, she built free clinics across the country. She funded schools in forgotten villages. She gave scholarships to students who, like her, had talent but no chance. People asked her why she didn't take time to enjoy her new life. She just smiled and said, "I'm already enjoying it. I'm helping people. That's the richest feeling there is." She even hired former caregivers and nurses who had been treated like shadows in the system, giving them fair pay, benefits, and dignity. Caregivers, she said during a speech, are the heartbeat of humanity, and too often we forget to thank them. One day, someone showed up at her office. Not a reporter, not a business partner, not even a politician. It was the silent driver from the black car, the same man who used to deliver those mysterious envelopes to Mr. Benson. He stepped inside, removed his hat, and bowed slightly. "I was instructed to give you this," he said, handing her a sealed envelope. Inside was a letter written in Mr. Benson's shaky handwriting. "Dear Maria," it read, "if you're reading this, then I've done what I came here to do. I spent my life building walls around myself, thinking success meant power. But power without love is just loneliness wearing a crown. Then I met you. You reminded me that kindness is the only true wealth. That caring for someone doesn't mean they have to give anything back, because the act itself is its own reward. I left you everything because you deserved it, not because of what you did for me, but because of how you made me remember what it means to be human. Now go out there and make the world better than I ever could. Love always, Mr. Benson." Tears rolled down Maria's face as she folded the letter carefully and placed it in a small wooden box on her desk. That box became her most valuable possession. Not the banks, not the money, not the power. Just a simple note from a man who found peace through her kindness. One evening, Maria stood in front of a crowd gathered for the opening of a new community center. Children laughed behind her. Mothers clapped. Old men nodded in gratitude. She looked into the camera and spoke. "All I did was show kindness to a man the world forgot. I didn't know he was building a legacy just for me. But I also didn't do it for reward. I did it because it was the right thing to do." So, wherever you are, whatever your life looks like, don't wait for recognition to be kind. Don't wait for thanks to help someone in need. Because sometimes the smallest act of love can open the biggest door you never saw coming. She paused, then smiled. And if you're watching this, maybe it's your turn. Kindness costs nothing, but sometimes it gives you everything. Kindness is never wasted, even when it seems like no one sees it. Sometimes the greatest rewards come not from seeking recognition, but from giving love and care to those who have been forgotten by the world. You never know whose life you may change or what doors your goodness may open in return. If this story touched your heart, hit like, comment below, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder that doing good matters. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that will move your soul. Thank you very much for watching.